Hi, Alan Schimmel here for DevOps.com, DevOps TV at Does San Francisco. Happy to be joined by the Nationwide crew. You probably recognize this man. He's been on many a DevOps.com event. Carmen DeArdo. Carmen, welcome.
Thank you, Alan. It's always a pleasure.
Yep, and along with Carmen, we have Cindy from Nationwide and Jim.
Yes.
Guys, but I forgot your last name, so why don't we tell our audience? Jim?
Jim Grafmeyer.
Grafmeyer?
Cindy Payne.
Cindy Payne, easy enough. Now, all three of you presented at Does this year, right?
Correct.
Yep.
Joined. Why don't you give our audience a little bit of background about what your presentation was? Carmen,
So,
we're looking at you.
I don't have any idea what we talked about, Alan. I look at the tape.
You're just a pretty face up there. Next.
So, I mean, Gene wanted, Gene has kind of the format, right, of where have you been, what are you doing now, and then where are you going and how you need help, right? So I kind of set the stage of where we've been through the first 2 years of what we've talked about, right? And then Cindy and Jim talked about, and I'll let them go on about it, on how they've helped us really, because we built some stuff and that's good, but it's not enough. We really needed that transformational element to kick in, and that's what they talked about and provided in the talk.
So before we go into specifically what Cindy and Jim spoke about, Cindy, what is your role at Nationwide?
Yeah, I'm a solutions architect for Nationwide Financial Digital.
Okay.
And that was part of the story, was that Carmen's in an organization that builds capability, but he doesn't own any assets that these capabilities are going to be used.
Right.
And we're
You're
in need of these capabilities, and so the partnership between Carmen's organization and our organization is a lot of what we focused on.
Excellent. And Jim?
Similar area, same area, architect in our NF, Nationwide Financial's digital space, which has unique needs with our business needing to accelerate much faster than we were. So the digital areas were kind of unique to prove out some of these technologies that we're building.
So really a lot of this then was taking the capability that Carmen has sort of built, has built
Right.
over the last couple of years, and now applying it in real world business units such as yourselves and doing that. And to me, it's really, that's a common theme that we hear a lot it does, right? And I call it the pockets of DevOps. And one of the things I actually learned from Carmen, and I've learned a lot about DevOps from Carmen over the years actually, is you're
scaring me out. I'm not sure where this is going. But.
No, is that you don't go DevOps company-wide or nationwide, for no pun intended.
Wow.
Immediately, right? You sort of build your beachheads.
Yeah.
You pick your spots, you pick your wins, you pick a small but critical initiative and make it a win and build on that success. And you build out from these pockets of DevOps, if you will, like bubbles, kids playing with bubbles. As these bubbles come together, you get a bigger bubble, right? And eventually, not today or yesterday, but over time, your DevOps sort of spreads, right? That DevOps sort of patterns and methodologies and philosophy spreads through an organization. And I all kidding aside, I did learn that from you. You've said those words.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay. But
no, Al, I appreciate it. So you're right. I mean, we specifically talked about the lean concept of model lines, right? And where you try to model a behavior or model a capability. And we talked and kind of laughed, but it's true, right? They have the street credibility, right? I mean, I'm just talking about some people would consider theories or experiments, right? And then they have the credibility and they make it real, right? And so you get a model line, especially one who has kind of the pedigree, the respect of the organization, that's much more powerful. And then they talk about it, they talk about what's possible, and that's a powerful transformational agent.
Yep. I agree. So, it's easy to stand up and talk about success. Everyone loves a winner. But share with me, Jim, Cindy, what were some of the challenges? What were maybe some of the fails that you had in taking these capabilities into the organization?
Yeah, I mean, we talked a little bit about the gaps in tooling. There's some tooling that Carmen isn't standing up himself. We're actually relying on infrastructure and operations. So I went through some of the tooling that we normally don't discuss when we talk about the delivery pipeline, and set the context of what we're really trying to do is respond to the need for speed from our business, and it all starts with them. And so when we're looking at what tools to adopt and how to adopt them, it's always fitting into this. Is it going to make us faster so that we can meet our business needs? And that today it might be GitHub, tomorrow it's Urban Code deploy and release, whatever is ready for us to consume. And then we think from just our attitude about innovation in general that we're good partners because we're willing to experiment, and if we fail, then we help fix it and we move on. We're definitely not the type of practitioners that expect Carmen to get it right the first time. We want to instead accelerate getting the tool into the team as quickly as possible and learn, and then adjust from there. And some of the other areas at Nationwide maybe don't have the capacity to do that. So
Maybe not as forward thinking.
well, you know.
Okay, well, they just don't have the capacity. Jim, what about you?
So I walked through a lot of the architecture changes that we were making on the applications because the technology is great, but in our case, a lot of our web apps were legacy, kind of monolithic apps, so driving through small batch sizes to do any sort of continuous delivery required architecture changes because the apps just couldn't support it the way they were currently architected. There was a few things that we were kind of embracing. One was 12-factor app, and using that as kind of our guiding principles for how to build modern scalable apps going forward, and then a few other variations of things that we're doing without having to rewrite the apps. So one of the changes I walked through was the acknowledgement that maybe different tiers of our applications need to move at different speeds. So we saw a lot of requests coming for, basically front end changes. So let's engineer a process where those changes can go out much quicker than a much larger new feature, for example.
Great. Guys, let me pivot a little bit with one last question to you. Carmen, you've been now, this is probably your third year at DOES, but Cindy, Jim, this is your first year, I understand.
Correct.
Newbie impressions of DevOps Enterprise Summit.
Yeah, it's great to have a community. You really feel that when you come here. And then Gene Kim's excitement about every speaker and every little nugget that we share with each other. But I think this year we were really excited that the focus is on what they call the horses and not the unicorns, and learning, just having it be a complete learning environment for us.
Jim?
To me, it was comforting that to get the validation that a lot of the problems we're facing, we're not the only ones, right? So org structure seemed to be big this year. No one quite has that figured out yet of what the right org structure is. It seemed like a lot of people had a similar journey as Nationwide in terms of DevOps starting as kind of a grassroots effort and then snowballing more and more with senior leadership support. So that was refreshing. But it's been great.
Great, man. That's fantastic. Carmen, I'm going to give you the last word.
Okay.
Impressions it does this year?
I mean, it's in the engine. I mean, it's all. I always say it's the best 3-day learning experience on the planet, right? I mean, you really do feel like people are just very authentic, right? They're not trying to sell anything. There's not posturing. It's just, here's what we've done, right? This worked, this didn't. How can you help us? And then I think, you can see there was probably more talk this year around people-oriented issues, right? The lean concept of respect for people. John Willis and Gene's talk about Deming and the whole psychological, impacts of change.
Yeah.
Probably those things got said a lot more than terms like Docker and containers and things like that.
There's plenty of Docker and containers too.
There is.
Kubernetes.
Sure, but I think
Microservices.
I think people recognize that, we've talked about this before. If you don't get the culture right, the technology is not going to get you
Don't
there.
make a difference. You're right. Okay. Well, Carmen, Cindy, Jim, thanks for joining us today on DevOps.com's DevOps TV, and thank you for presenting It Does. And looking forward to see you at future Does events here in San Francisco and elsewhere. Carmen, it's always a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks, Alan.
I was serious.
My
I learned
pleasure.
a lot about DevOps from you.
I'm glad.
All
I'm just
right.
glad to help, Alan. So
All right.
I always enjoy it.
Okay. Hey, this is Alan Schimmel for DevOps.com, DevOps TV, live at Does San Francisco 2016.